Welcome to another video from Roland Mösel, founder of Planetary Engineering Group Earth. How happened the crisis in Sri Lanka 2022? First, let's look on the country. There are living about 22 million inhabitants on 65,000 square kilometers. The exports of the country is about $11.3 billion in 2020, and the imports are $16.2 billion. And from these imports, there are $1.27 billion for refined petroleum, this means gasoline and diesel, and $384 million for crude oil. How can this happen that we have $5 billion more imports than exports? Oh, there is tourism. This is the solution, and it works fine until 2020. You see a sharp downfall in tourism. This was caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. I have only data for 2020, but I think 2021 it will be similar like this. For what is the oil used? Main oil consumer is the traffic. And typical for a poor country, there are far more motorcycles and scooters than there are cars. And also there are more tricycle scooters than cars. These are typical this sort of scooters. In front it looks like a scooter, and in back is an open cabin for maybe 4 passengers, widely used in countries like this for taxi driving and so on. And there are about 8 million vehicles, all consuming oil. Electric vehicles are maybe some more as the 3 motorhomes, but I think they are not widely used there. Let's look at the electricity generation. Only 695 kilowatt hours per inhabitant. And I think it will be similar like on the Philippines. A few rich people waste electricity by air conditioning from uninsulated houses and only 1 glass windows, a total waste of energy, outside 40 degrees Celsius, inside 20 degrees Celsius, and between only nearly no isolation and 1 glass windows, but it's like this. And we see here they opened a coal power plant in 2011 and maybe another bigger one in 2014. Why? Oh, let's look back. They used all the time oil for generating electricity, but there was 2008 and the big oil price shock in 2008. And what was the solution? At this time, photovoltaic was far more expensive. The big price drop was only 2009, 2010, and there was very limited possibility to store electricity. Lead batteries have a short living, and lithium batteries had been at this time very expensive. So they decided, maybe another oil price crisis come. Let's make a coal power plant. All coal is imported. Sri Lanka has no own production of coal. Let's now look how photovoltaic works on Sri Lanka. Very, very well. All the year, nearly every month the same yield, and compared to Germany, nearly the double yield per installed kilowatt of photovoltaic. It's great, because it's near equator and so very similar all the year. Here a statement from the President. When will we allow the import of vehicles in the future? Just right now, it's not allowed to import any vehicles to Sri Lanka because of the disastrous situation. Yes, 2 years very low income on tourism and an oil price rise in the last some months. This is a very difficult situation for the countries, and so forbid the import of vehicles of all sorts until the crisis is sorted out. The President also noted that about 20% of Sri Lanka's annual import is allocated for oil imports. Yes, and something later, when the total export earnings are less than 1,000 million US dollar a month, we have to spend about 350 million a month for oil alone. 70% for vehicles, 21% for creating electricity, and 4% for industry. Yes, I know it's not 100%, but I read here only the statement of the President. Let's now look at the big difference. 2020, as the pandemic caused lockdowns all over the world, the oil price dropped dramatically because there was much less demand, much less airplanes on the way, much less traffic, home office, lockdown, all the things, and the oil price was very, very low. And now we have a very high oil price. This is a big reason for the crisis. What did the government of Sri Lanka wrong? Oh, nearly nothing. The government of a poor country has not much possibilities. They cannot do very much. But other things influence the fate of this country, the fate of the world. In 1995, a small German development company introduced at the big German car companies lithium batteries special for electric cars. The reaction of the car industry: the oil is eternal and cheap. The electric car will never come. And as a proof for this, 1st August 1997, in the famous German magazine Picture of Science, Bild der Wissenschaft, was an article about lithium-mangan batteries. When we make much in research and make a big factory, we could have in 4 years lithium-mangan batteries for only 155 euros a kilowatt hour. Great! If this would have happened, Giga factory from Tesla in Nevada was only opened 2016. What would have happened to the world if the first gigafactory for batteries would have opened in Germany between 2001 and 2006? 10 years advantage in the change to electric mobility and the day-night balancing of solar energy. We would have a complete different situation now. We would be maybe at 20 or 30% less oil demand on a way to really extinguish oil demand in the next 15 years. But this did not happen. The German industry ignored this possibility. In September 2011, I was, with a government invitation from China, on the Global Economic Leaders Summit in Changchun. And there I gave a keynote about we need an international organization for the oil exit. Yes, I was there as an independent think tank, Planetary Engineering Group Earth. This picture is from the World Energy Outlook of the IEA, International Energy Association, in 2008. We see here dark blue, these are the current oil fields. Light blue, these oil fields have yet to be developed. And red, these are the oil fields which had to be found. Yes, it looks dramatic what is here on this picture. It has to be found 5 times Saudi Arabia until 2030, or we have not enough oil and the oil price explodes. One time Saudi Arabia was found, this was not known 2011, but this was the US fracking industry. In the best time of the US fracking industry, yes, they had about the oil shield of Saudi Arabia. But there are 4 times Saudi Arabia more to be found. And when we don't do it, we have an international economic crisis, much bigger crisis than 2008. Here about the oil price and the mechanics of offer and demand determine the price. If there is 1 million more demand than supply, the price rises by $20. And if there is 1 million more supply than demand, the price falls by $20. We have in the year 2008 a perfect example for this. First, there was not enough oil for the demand and the price was $147 at the peak. And then was the world economic crisis. Much less oil demand because of the crisis, and the oil price dropped to $32. About 5.5 million barrels a day less demand caused this oil price crash. The proposed International Organization for the Oil Exit target: extinguish an oil demand of 5 times the Saudi Arabian oil production until 2030. The method: replace the demand for oil by using electric power, mainly from sun and wind. The basic calculation: the daily demand for oil is today approximately 90 million barrels. This was 2011. 1 million barrels less demand means $20 lower price, and this makes 1.8 billion a day, 657 billion a year, and 6,570 billion over 10 years. How to reduce oil demand? When we replace 200 million gasoline scooters by electric scooters, we have 1 million less oil demand. The same is for 40 million electric cars. Here on the picture is the BYD E6. At this time, 2011, was no Tesla S, and this was with a 60 kilowatt hours lithium iron phosphate battery. The electric car with the biggest range was in China widely used as an taxi. And when we replace oil heating in houses by heat pumps, 25 million houses using electric heat pumps instead of oil, we also save 1 million barrels per day. Proposed basic capital demand for an international oil exit organization, 2% of the annual worldwide oil cost as a budget. And this translates to $62 billion per year as budget. The cheapest way, policy change. Yes, but the production capacity of the industry has to be as big as to fulfill the demand. When we make a policy change, we say only electric scooters allowed, and the industry says how should we in a short time deliver such quantities of electric scooters. We have a delivery chain, we have to look at all the parts, the batteries and so on. It's not so easy possible. And second, in the first, new technique is more expensive. But there is a rule what we can watch at several industries. At a growing industry, when the world market doubles, the price will shrink by 20%. This have we seen at the photovoltaic industry, we see it at the battery industry, we have seen it at much other industry like televisions and smartphones and so on. And so we have to look the next part. Main task, credits and investment. Investment in research and development, investment in building up the necessary production capacity of the oil replacing industry, and then we need all the raw materials to produce. And next, credits for consumers for replacing oil consumption by purchasing products of the oil replacing industry. So how much would Sri Lanka get from this? We have a budget of $62 million a year. And maybe $30 million a year is for 0.4 credits for consumers. And how much should be allocated to Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka is a primary target country because there are gasoline scooters to be replaced by electric scooters, and photovoltaic is very efficient here, high yield, and all the year nearly the same yield. So maybe 1% of this 30 billion budget would have gone to Sri Lanka. And what to do with 300 million a year? Could make a subsidy for purchasing electric scooters and photovoltaic to charge these electric scooters, or maybe $1,500 per electric scooter and photovoltaic set. It's only to make the purchase easier. It's not full, but we make a little bit. When you take this, you get the $1,500 and it is a good business for you. So, yes, we can replace 200,000 gasoline scooters per year by electric scooters. And after 10 years, 2 million electric scooters around, about 45% of all scooters would be now electric, and the oil consumption of the country would have decreased by about 15%. Not worldwide, only in Sri Lanka, because here we can replace very good the gasoline scooters by the electric scooters and charge them by photovoltaic. Worldwide maybe some percent, but we are on the way for better times. But in Sri Lanka 15%, and maybe the oil crisis would not be as big as now, but it would be a good contribution to it. It's not about to stabilize the oil price. It's also an investment in all industry facing the energy challenges of the 21st century. Only 2%, and we can start to make this big replacement from oil by electricity from sun and wind. Yes, there is also a policy idea in this lecture, backstop. This means one time the oil price is very high and then the oil price is very low, and all the people say, oh great, the oil price is now again very low, we need not anything to replace oil, it's now cheap. No, that's wrong. There should be, when the oil price goes from very high to very low, like it happened 2008, from $147 to $32, there should be an increase in taxes on oil. And what to do with this increase in taxes of oil? Oh, we can reduce budget deficit, subsidies for oil exit technology, and a main part, reduction of dues based on human work. As soon as the oil demand reduces because of being replaced by electricity from sun and wind, humanity will realize it is still possible to solve the whole CO2 problem and the climate change. The oil exit is the first big step towards a stable, durable, harmonic world civilization. This was my keynote in China, but all the West ignored it. Oh, we have oil, we have not to make sorrows. We just developed fracking, it's a great idea. Yes, this was the thought of the West, and so it did not happen. And this caused the big crisis in Sri Lanka and maybe also in many other countries today. The ignorance of the West, ignoring that it's necessary to do an oil exit. This was another video of Roland Mösel, founder of Planetary Engineering Group Earth. And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified when I make my next video. And now you see my contribution in the future for the oil exit. This small village will have about 200 kilowatt photovoltaic and about 400 kilowatt hours of batteries, and sure, the inhabitants of this future village will all drive electric.